what we're going to do today is we're going to be dealing with a third full-scale scenario. It's the second of the alternatives to the Warren Commission and FBI, and this was going to be the investigation that was conducted by New Orleans District Attorney, City District Attorney Jim Garrison. But what I wanted to point out is that, though, because we're handing back the papers for you, the first essay, I want to give you some kind of a sense of sort of what the demographics are of the class that what we got, not grade wise, because I mean these particular essays are only 10% of your grade, which means that you could have gotten a 0 on this and still get an A in the course if you ace everything else. But the bottom line is this was to try to get you thinking, get you focused on where you think you're going, what your opinion is, if you've come to one, about the lone gunman theory, and where that puts you with regard to getting prepared to look at these other theories. What we've got here is we actually have Tiffany. Is Tiffany here? Tiffany's not here today. Oh, well, Tiffany has actually taken the position that Lee Harvey Oswald killed the president, and he did it all by himself. So there is a person in our room that has done that. And the advantage is that if she hadn't said that, we'd have to go hire somebody through central casting to take up that position for us here. So we've got a person there. Now we also have one person on the other extreme end of the spectrum already. Richard, where's Richard? Richard Tezak. See, both the folks who've taken these extreme positions are probably tired out from having done it. But Richard has set forth the position that the Joint Chiefs of Staff did this, that this was a military coup, and that in fact he actually goes on, really quite well done, his paper, pointing out that there's all kinds of implications of fascism here, with fascism inside the military, the lectures that were being given in the military about the John Birch Society and the rabid anti-communist position that David Talbot talks about some in Brothers that you've seen here. So he has one of the clearest positions that was presented out of all of the papers, in which he asserts flat out that this was a military coup conducted by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Even going to the point of pointing out that, for example, that John F. Kennedy actually had John Frankenheimer do a movie about 7 Days in May, purporting to set forth the scenario of a military coup in the United States, and that he had actually, Kennedy had also been instrumental in getting the authors to write the book. And so Richard has got a pretty clear thesis here about the military coup. We haven't gotten to that particular one yet. So he was actually kind of out in front of us, doing some of his own research and reading some of the books about this. The largest group of our people, and this is Seth and Victoria and Austin and Mallory and Ziamara, and Brendan and Alan, have all basically asserted that you believe that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in this, I don't want to get anybody, I don't want to libel anybody here, but the actual belief that Oswald in fact did do shooting, was involved in shooting at the president, but that it was part of a larger conspiracy. They reject Tiffany's theory that Oswald did this all by himself. And they will be given plenty of opportunity to challenge Tiffany about how she explains all those shots in that period of time, because she's apparently outdone the Warren Commission on this. And so that, but there's a whole bunch of us that have come to this position that Oswald did do it, did shoot at the president, was part of this conspiracy, but that it was a much larger group that he was involved in. Then there's a few of us, Jonathan and Lulit and Kimberly. Can you see your hands where there? No, we got Jonathan. There you go, Jonathan, and Lulit. There you go, and Kimberly. Okay, the three of you have gone down the patsy line. That in fact Oswald was a patsy. That he hadn't in fact been involved in the conspiracy. He hadn't been involved in shooting at the president. That he had been set up. Now that's a very widespread position among a lot of very competent researchers in this area. So we've got a few of us holding down that position here, which is going to be good, because when we get you all physically divided up in the classroom so you can actually throw things at each other, when we get into the heavy debates on this thing, we'll have somebody holding down that position. Then there is in fact one of us, Taylor. Where's Taylor? Taylor has gone right straight down the G. Robert Blakey line. That this was an organized crime killing. I'll want to ask him some questions about how he thinks Oswald got involved in it. Probably going down the line of his stepfather having been involved in organized crime, because there's information along that line. So we do have one of our people has actually taken the organized crime line. So we've got that one covered as well. And then there is sort of in the middle here, there is the CIA and the mob. The CIA and the mob did it together. This has got a lot of evidence supporting this one, and that we've got Mallory and Lulit and Marlene. Where can I see your hands? Where's Marlene? Marlene's not here either. Okay, she got worn out on this theory. Okay, Lula, I got you. And Mallory is sick. I know Mallory is in the doctors. Okay, so there's three of our people. I was a little surprised that there weren't more on that one, but there's three of our people who have taken the position that the mob was engaged in doing this with the CIA, and that it is a very, very popular conspiracy theory amongst all of the major people who have spent lots and lots of time on this. Then we've got Sherry. Sherry, there you go. Sherry has taken the multi-organizational plot position. That basically every organization that has 3 or more letters abbreviated in their name are involved in this. She hasn't done that. What she has said is that the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the FBI, and the CIA, and she didn't specifically put the organized crime people in there, but I'm sure they'll be in there. But there is an interesting twist that she has here, which we're going to be asking her about as we go in further. That the president's cabinet was involved. She may be confusing this with Abraham Lincoln's assassination, but this is a multi-organizational plot. And so that's as I say, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the FBI, the CIA, that they're all in here, and that's cool. Okay, so what we've got all the way from Tiffany's position that it was Oswald all by himself to a whole bunch of folks in there saying that it was Oswald as part of this larger conspiracy, basically gathering around the House Select Committee on Assassinations report not so much the organized crime one all by itself that G. Robert Blakey went off on all by himself and persuaded Taylor. But then there's the Patsy one that we've got here, and the CIA and the mob. So we've got a good spread of opinions now. Everybody being wise in their last paragraph saying, but I'm subject to reevaluating this as we get more information on this. But you guys performed very, very well on these papers. You've done exactly what it is that I wanted you to do. You pushed yourself to the edge and said, look, I realize that most people in your positions would say, look, I just want to wait until I hear all the information and decide what you think about this as our teacher. But you didn't do that. That you've actually come forward and you said, look, I've looked at this stuff, I've thought about this stuff, and I've got an opinion already, but I'm subject to change. So I want to congratulate you all. I'm glad that we got this kind of spread. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you will recall the 7 worldviews that we did set forth here. What the theory is that if you confront a community with a particular public policy problem, the community will divide itself into 7 different positions.
Wow.
And as it turns out, coincidentally enough, that's what we have here. So that you're performing completely unconsciously, comporting with this pattern of human conduct, which we'll review in the last class. So that's where we are. In that you did very well on this. The grades will reflect that. Okay. So I just wanted to let you know that we've got a good spread on this, and I'm not going to require that you break up into small groups and sit with your allies on this, so that you can recognize your opponents and notice them on campus whenever you see them, so you can continue to ask them questions about how in the world they came to that judgment. Okay, so what we have today is we're going to be opening on to our second alternative theory. And once again, remember that the Warren Commission report that is consistently reported in virtually all of the major mainstream media as not only the official government position on this, but the position which, not coincidentally, they all, like sheep, end up saying they believe too. All the media still maintain that Lee Harvey Oswald did this killing by himself, and they completely ignore all of the challenges that have been raised to that. And that the most that they're willing to concede is that, okay, the Warren Commission may have been a little sloppy in the work that they did. And you'll be able to ask them a few questions about exactly how they think sloppy is completely ignoring, like 80 witnesses, but they've overcome that problem. And so that you're going to be experiencing now in the next couple of weeks just this kind of gathering drumbeat of all the major media coming out and once again ridiculing anybody who doesn't believe that basically preposterous theory, with apologies to Tiffany. The fact of the matter is that one of the fellows just came up today and said, oh look, Seth had a copy, his father found a copy in the Los Angeles Times of, they dragged up one remaining living member of the Warren Commission staff to do the obligatory editorial, to go out and say, I'm looking forward with dread to the anniversary of the 22nd coming along, because we're going to be inundated again with all these preposterous conspiracy theories. Whereas he is still convinced that Oswald did this and did this all by himself. Okay, so that I just want to get prepared. They had last night However, they had on the CNN that Piers Morgan had Oliver Stone on. And so that opens on to the issue of today. Now,
He was on NPR this morning, too.
pardon? Yes, and yeah, he was at, I understand he was at Amy Goodman this morning. And so he has succeeded in positioning himself as sort of the major lightning catcher. That when all the anti-conspiracy theorists get all together in one room, they start talking about Oliver Stone, because they thought they'd basically done away with June Garrison himself, and so they just pick up on Oliver Stone. I should tell you a funny story. When I was Stone had asked me to come and see the pre-edit of the movie JFK. And how many people have seen the movies yet? All of the students. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4,
I'm currently watching.
5, 6. Pardon?
I'm currently watching.
Good. Just pay attention to class, though. You got it on your computer. Okay. But the bottom line, I would ask that you take a look at this while we're in the course of this week talking about this particular theory, because it is the best kind of presentation of the kind of dramatic dynamics surrounding the investigation of Jim Garrison. That when they got the unedited version of the movie done, Stone asked me to come and see this. I was down in LA, and I was in the process of meeting with Mace Neufeld and Bob Ramey. Bob Ramey at the time was the president of the Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is what awards all the Academy Awards, that group. And Bob Ramey and Mace Neufeld were the producer and director, respectively, of all the Tom Clancy movies. The Hunt for Red October and Patriot Game and all those Clancy novels. And they were interested in doing the Iran-Contra case. We'd gotten to the point of the negotiations where they kept saying, well, we have to take out this stuff about Bush. We can't really put that in because he's still alive. And of course, we can't have the CIA ended up looking like the bad guy. The CIA has to be the good guy, like they were in Patriot Games, where they were going to great lengths to try to stop the cocaine smuggling coming into the United States, which I thought was humorous, at least. But anyway, so Oliver Stone was going to have me come over to his house later that afternoon and go downstairs where he's got this big viewing room downstairs to actually see the unedited version of the film. And I told Bob Ramey, the president of the Academy of Arts and Sciences, that I was going to go see it. And he said, "Oh, look, can I please come and see it? Will you call Oliver Stone and ask him if I can come and see it?" So I called and left a message for Oliver, telling him I was going to bring Bob Ramey over, and he thought I thought that would be okay. And just as we were getting ready to leave, Ramey said, "Look, Jack Valenti wants to come too." Jack Valenti happened to be in the car right behind Kennedy when he was shot, riding with Lyndon Johnson. And he's very upset because he understands that Oliver Stone has suggested that Lyndon Johnson was part of this cabal that actually killed the president. And he's really upset about it, so he wants to get a chance to see whether this is true. Is it okay if he comes with us? So I said, okay, that would be okay too. So Bob Ramey and I and Jack Valenti go on over to Stone's house, and they're expecting us, so we go on in, we go downstairs, and we're getting set to watch this thing. But Stone wasn't there yet, so we were waiting and waiting and waiting. He comes in about a half an hour late, and he's got a copy, a pre-publication copy of Newsweek magazine. That on the front page of it, it says JFK, Oliver Stone's Twisted Truth. And he's furious about the fact that he's being criticized by Newsweek for simply charging the President of the United States and the entire Joint Chiefs of Staff and the military establishment with killing the President. And so I said to Stone, I said, you know, you gotta get used to this. If you're gonna be saying this, you know, you're gonna get used to this. And so he has now gotten much stronger. He fights back in really good shape. You'll see him come forth this week. He'll be interviewed as the representative of the conspiracy community. And so that's why you should watch the movie. Because the movie, while it is an amalgam of three different authors, if you will, it does focus specifically on the investigation of Jim Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans. And as you will remember from all of your copious reading up to this point, that Oswald was basically back and forth between New Orleans and Dallas. And that therefore New Orleans becomes a salient point of investigation in this story. And as you will see in the film, you will see that the reason why the investigation turned to New Orleans is because there was a particular guy named Jack Martin. Jack Martin was a licensed private investigator in the state of Louisiana who worked with a man by the name of Guy Bannister. Guy Bannister was the former SAC, the special agent in charge of the Chicago office of the FBI. That is Chicago, that is the home of Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli. And so that when Guy Bannister retired, he moved to New Orleans, and he became a private detective in New Orleans. But yes?
I just wanted to point out the fun fact about Guy Bannister, which you no doubt know.
Yeah.
The originator of the actual FBI X-Files in the Northeast, when those first saucers and so on.
Yes.
He's the guy. So anyway.
So Bannister retires and goes to New Orleans, becomes a licensed private investigator, and he opens a private investigation office, and that he is also, very importantly, he is the president of the World Anti-Communist League Caribbean chapter. And the World Anti-Communist League, for your reference, there is a book written by John Lee Anderson. It's called Inside the League. And it is a biography, basically, of the World Anti-Communist League, pointing out that its origins were in South Korea, inside the military, encouraged by the American Central Intelligence Agency, and it has, over the years, become a major haven for fascists. And this man, Guy Bannister, was the president of the Caribbean chapter of the World Anti-Communist League. So, over and above, some would argue almost as instead of actually conducting himself as a professional private investigator in New Orleans, he actually used this office to be the head of the World Anti-Communist League. And the interesting factor is that it was located basically right on the street corner in between the Office of Naval Intelligence, the FBI, and the Central Intelligence Agency's office. We're all on a little square, and the office of Guy Bannister was right on the corner. The most important aspect of that is that the Lafayette Street entrance of his private investigation firm was actually an entrance just on Lafayette Street around the corner from 544 Camp Street, which was the office of...
Fair play.
No, I know you know. But it was the office of Lee Harvey Oswald. And as it turns out that the two doors go into the same office. And so Lee Harvey Oswald and his Fair Play for Cuba office was actually in the very same office where Guy Bannister had his office as the head of the Caribbean chapter of the World Anti-Communist League. And what happened is that on November 22nd of 1963, this man by the name of Jack Martin, who was an associate of Guy Bannister, was confronted by Bannister in that office and was gun-whipped by Guy Bannister. Guy Bannister, in a sort of a fit of paranoia, challenging this guy Jack Martin, asserting that Martin had been into his files, that he was looking in the files, and apparently Jack Martin made the mistake of saying, "Look, why would I have to go searching through your files? Just in the last year, I've seen enough go on in your office to write a book." That wasn't the right thing to say. And so Guy Bannister gun whips him and puts him in the hospital. And this guy, Jack Martin, gets really upset about this. And he calls the office of the district attorney, James Garrison, and reports that this guy, Guy Bannister, knew Lee Harvey Oswald, was associated with Lee Harvey Oswald, and in fact had been involved with Lee Harvey Oswald in stealing United States military equipment from a local armory and transferring it to the anti-Castro Cubans, whom he asserted had a secret training base on the northern shore of Lake Pontchartrain. And as you will immediately recall, Lake Pontchartrain, the northern shore of Lake Pontchartrain, is one of the 5 locations of anti-Castro paramilitary training bases that were reported to me and my investigator back in 1973 by Santo Trafficante. And so that piece of information from Jack Martin, that there was in fact a paramilitary training base established on the northern shore of Lake Pontchartrain, and that military supplies were being provided to the anti-Castro Cubans at that location, turns out to be true. And the fact of the matter is, it turns out to be true that when Jim Garrison checked it out, found out that there had been a substantial amount of military equipment stolen from the local armory. And so that also correlated with what Jack Martin was telling him. And so Jack Martin became a source of information flowing to Jim Garrison right within a day of the assassination of the president. And so Garrison started asking information of his investigators, and one of his investigators, Lou Ivan, told him that he had a source who had told Lou Ivan that on the day before the assassination, that would be November 21st of 1963, that a man who was an associate of Guy Bannister's and Jack Martin's, a man by the name of David Ferry, who knew Lee Oswald and had been the commander of the Civil Air Patrol unit that Lee Harvey Oswald was a member of for many years when he lived in New Orleans, was supposed to be the getaway pilot for Ferry, or excuse me, for Oswald. And that Ferry and a number of other associates of his, who were all involved with Oswald in stealing military equipment from the armory and providing it to the anti-Castro Cubans in the base at Lake Pontchartrain, that several of these associates, along with Ferry, had on the day before the assassination all gotten into a car, and in the middle of a massive thunderstorm had decided that they were going to drive to Texas to go ice skating. And that they had gone to an ice skating rink, allegedly, where nobody ice skated. But in fact, David Ferry was on the payphone at the ice skating rink, taking phone calls back and forth rather furiously. And so what happened is Jim Garrison got his investigators together and said, look, we had better do some preliminary checking on this. We have here an assertion made by a close associate of Guy Bannister that in fact they're providing military equipment to the anti-Castro Cubans, and that Lee Harvey Oswald was a part of that, and that this guy David Ferry, a known pilot, had gone to Texas, driven to Dallas the night before the assassination, and was reported to have gone there to help fly Oswald out after the assassination. And so they brought in David Ferry into Garrison's office, brought him in for questioning, and asked him what he was doing going to Texas the day before the assassination. And Ferry told him that they had gone to go ice skating. And he asked him, well, you know, why did you happen to decide you wanted to go ice skating all of a sudden in the middle of the biggest lightning storm that we've had here in many years? And he said it was just one of those spur-of-the-moment things. And he said, well, then what did you do after you got there? And he said, well, we got there, and the next morning we all went duck hunting. We went duck hunting, and the guys that were with me, we went out, we went duck hunting, and so Jim Garrison said to him, he said, well, did any of you get any ducks? And he said, yes, I think the guys got a few. I think the other guys got a few. And so Garrison said, that's peculiar, because we talked to them, and they said they didn't get any geese at all. And he said, and Ferry said, oh, that's right. I didn't really mean that they got a few of them. I meant they got none. And why is that? Garrison said. He said, well, because it turns out those ducks are really smart, and that we would start getting up to them, and then they would fly away. And he said, but so you didn't get any of them at all? He said, that's right. He said, we got there, we had our guns out, we went out into the swamps, and they all flew away. We didn't get any. At which point Garrison says, well, that's peculiar, because the guys said they didn't have any guns with them at all. And Ferry said, oh, that's right. That's why we didn't get any ducks. Because we got out there all the way out into the swamp looking for these things, and we realized we didn't have our guns. Because we hadn't brought any guns with us. So what happened is Garrison wasn't convinced by this story that David Ferry had given him. And David Ferry said that he'd never met Oswald, didn't have any associations with him whatsoever, didn't know Guy Bannister, didn't know Jack Martin, basically took the position that he didn't know anybody, that anybody was talking about here. And so what happened is Jim Garrison held him over for questioning and contacted the FBI to come and talk to him. The FBI came and talked to him and released him immediately. But very peculiarly decided that they were going to hold a press conference announcing that not only had they released Mr. Ferry, but they had apologized to him for his having been picked up and questioned, and announced publicly that it wasn't they who detained him, but that it was the district attorney in New Orleans that had done it. And so what happened is Jim Garrison and his staff said, okay, look, we've done our part. You know, we had this information that had come to us from this guy Jack Martin, We looked into it, it didn't seem like this was a very good alibi that this fellow had, and we turned him over to the FBI. And since this isn't a crime that happened here in New Orleans, it's not immediately in our jurisdiction, and so they just let it go. And so what happened is, over the course of the next year, as you know, the Warren Commission conducted its inquiry. In 1964, they came out with their report stating it was just Oswald all by himself, and that it wasn't until about 1966, as you'll recall, that Mark Lane, actually after having read the 26 volumes, starts punching large holes in the side of this ship that had been floated by the Warren Commission. And Jim Garrison, the district attorney in New Orleans, started finding out about this and started wondering more about this. And then he learned, again, from his investigator, the investigator pointed out to him, that Ivins pointed out to him that Ivins had another source, that there was an attorney by the name of Dean Andrews there in New Orleans, who in fact had been contacted on the night of November 22nd, when Lee Harvey Oswald, as you may recall, was being dragged around inside the Dallas Police Department with the entire army of media people inside the police headquarters with cameras every time they take him out of the interrogation room, and they interrogated him for 12 straight hours. And as you recall, they didn't record a single second of the interrogation of him. But when they would take him from one room to another, the media would all swarm on him and ask him questions. And during that episode, all during that night, he kept saying, "I'm a patsy. I need somebody to come forward. I've requested legal assistance. Someone should be coming forward to provide legal assistance to me." And it turns out that Dean Andrews, the attorney in New Orleans, stated that he had been contacted that evening, the evening of November 22nd of 1963, by a man by the name of Clay Bertrand, B-E-R-S-T-R-A-N-D, Bertrand. The fellow named Clay Bertrand called him on the telephone and asked to retain him, Dean Andrews, as an attorney, to go to Dallas to represent Oswald. And so Garrison now found out about this. This is in 1966, at the same time that Mark Lane is writing this book, Rush to Judgment, blowing big holes in the theory of the Warren Commission. And so he goes to interrogate this fellow, Dean Andrews. And Dean Andrews basically starts shucking and jiving and telling him that, I'm not going to talk to you about this. You know, it's attorney-client relationship, and so basically, Jim Garrison began to threaten him, saying that, look, I could call you in front of a grand jury, and if you don't answer the questions of the grand jury, I can hold you in contempt. I can put you in jail. And what happened is Dean Andrews then began to contact people saying that he was being badgered and bullied by the district attorney. And therefore a kind of a drumbeat of criticism started to be generated around New Orleans about Jim Garrison as he was going around doing, you might say, virtually the same thing that all the district attorneys do: bullying and bludgeoning and coercing and threatening and all the things that they do. And so suddenly the newspaper in New Orleans published a big front page article saying that the district attorney in New Orleans is conducting this bizarre investigation, somehow trying to charge different people around New Orleans with having been involved with Lee Harvey Oswald, because New Orleans was basically ignoring the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald had lived there, had been a fairly prominent person around there demonstrating on the streets on behalf of Castro, in ignoring the fact that he happened to have his address was exactly the same address where Guy Bannister and the anti-Castro Cuban operation was going on. And so that right away, this confrontation began to occur between Jim Garrison, the district attorney of New Orleans, and the established order in New Orleans. And Garrison had had quite a reputation by this time. Garrison had gotten into huge confrontations with the local political establishment. He'd gotten himself elected to be district attorney, and he basically charged the mayor with being corrupt. He charged 8 of the major judges in the city with being corrupt. They went after him, charging him with violations of Bar Association ethics by making claims like that about judges. He went after the judges and started prosecuting them. He prosecuted the mayor for corruption and got him convicted, and basically won when the Bar Association sanctioned him and ordered him to remain silent about criticizing the judges. He went all the way to the United States Supreme Court and won in the United States Supreme Court. Won a decision which asserted that in fact that he had a First Amendment right to publicly criticize judges if he chose to do so. And so Garrison had confronted the local political establishment, the mayor, the mayor's office, the judges, everyone else. He was quite an aggressive character. And so now he was engaged in this kind of pitched battle against all of them, trying to ridicule his investigation of Oswald and Oswald's relationship to Guy Bannister and the relationship to them stealing weapons and supplying military equipment to the right-wing anti-Castro Cubans, etc. And then what happened is all of a sudden weighing in support of the local New Orleans political establishment, the national news media started climbing on top of him and condemning him and criticizing him. NBC sent in a team of investigative reporters and investigators, and it turns out at first Jim Garrison thought that they'd come in to start investigating Oswald and Bannister and the people that were supporting the right-wing Cubans, except that much to his chagrin he discovered that they were in there investigating him and his staff. And NBC National News came out with a major, at that time, 30-minute special, just basically ridiculing Garrison and his investigation, and in casting around all types of rumors and accusations about Garrison. So Garrison then found out about, again, this was from his investigators. He found out that he started investigating this guy, Clay Bertrand, trying to find out who he was. Who was this that called Attorney Dean Andrews the night of the assassination, trying to hire him to represent Oswald? And he spent months chasing around trying to track down this Clay Bertrand, and finally he got a lead that there was a fellow named Perry Raymond Russo, who was a gay guy in New Orleans who was available to start asserting that he had actually been in a number of parties where Clay Bertrand was there, along with David Ferry, and along with other people. They asserted that David Ferry was gay, that Clay Bertrand was gay, that this guy Perry Raymond Russo was gay, and that there was this whole collection of people in New Orleans who were all around this guy, Clay Bertram, who was a very wealthy, sophisticated person. Now, a peculiar aspect of this investigation is that it seemed to take them months in his office to discover that Clay Bertram was Clay Shaw. And Clay Shaw was a very prominent businessman there in New Orleans, who had in fact founded the International Trademark there in New Orleans, was a very prominent social figure there. And virtually everybody knew that Clay Shaw was Clay Bertram, and that Clay Bertram was his kind of secret gay life. And that people had sort of respected that and allowed him to have whatever type of private life he wanted to have. But because Clay Bertrand is the name that had been given to Jim Garrison by Dean Andrews as the lawyer, as the person who called up trying to hire him to represent Oswald, Garrison bore down on this guy, Clay Shaw, and basically began to believe that if the way to go at this, that if he would arrest Clay Shaw and charge him with murdering the president and being part of a conspiracy, that he, Jim Garrison, could use the tools of his office to basically blow up the conspiracy that had been around Oswald. And what he did is he got himself into having filed the criminal charges against Clay Shaw, and then actually brought the case to a three-judge panel and presented witnesses who were willing to assert that they'd been in the meetings where Clay Shaw and David Ferry and this guy Perry Raymond Rousseau and others had actually openly talked about assassinating Kennedy, and asserted that David Ferry actually went in so far as to have Lee Harvey Oswald be in those meetings, and that they were actually discussing setting up a triangular fire team of high-powered rifles to assassinate to assassinate Kennedy. And so you had a set of witnesses, a handful of witnesses who were all willing to testify under oath that they had been in these meetings where these discussions had gone on, and that Clay Shaw was in those, and David Ferry was in those, and Lee Harvey Oswald were in those meetings. Now, the three judge panel, Malcolm O'Hara, Bernard Baggett, and Matthew Brannett, the three judges ruled unanimously that there was probable cause to believe that Clay Shaw had participated in a criminal conspiracy with Lee Harvey Oswald to assassinate President Kennedy. And moreover, Jim Garrison then brought the same witnesses before a grand jury and had them testify in front of a grand jury, and the grand jury returned an indictment against them for conspiring to assassinate the president. And one of the key issues in this case is, it's just one of those things that you need to know about this, because a lot of people won't tell you about it. There developed this major factual question as to whether Clay Bertram was Clay Shaw, because Clay Shaw denied it. The other people asserted, that's the guy. This is the guy who I knew as Clay Bertram. And Clay Bertram is the guy that Andrews said called him on the telephone, at least gave him that name, trying to get him to represent Lee Harvey Oswald on November 22nd. So, but this whole thing came down to a fingerprint card. That it turns out that when Garrison had Clay Shaw arrested, he brought them into the New Orleans Police Department and had him sit down there and give his thumbprint, put onto this thumbprint card, and that there was a blank spot on the thing to determine whether or not he'd ever used any aliases. And there was an officer, a police officer, who in fact was there, Officer Habergorst, his name was. Habergorst asked him in filling out the fingerprint card whether he'd ever used the alias Clay Bertram. And Clay Shaw said yes, according to the police officer. And so he typed it on there that he had an alias of Clay Bertram, and then he said he gave it to Clay Shaw, and Clay Shaw read it and signed it. And so that you had a piece of evidence here, the fingerprint card signed by Clay Shaw, acknowledging that he used the alias Clay Bertram. And you had the sworn testimony of Dean Andrews that a guy by the name of Clay Bertram had called on the night of the 22nd to try to hire him to be the lawyer for Oswald. And you had these other witnesses, Perry Raymond Rousseau and others, asserting that they had physically been in meetings with Clay Shaw, as using the name Clay Bertrand, with David Ferry and Lee Harvey Oswald, planning the triangular fire team assassination of President Kennedy. The problem arose is that when they got to the trial on this matter, when they got to the critical point of the trial of putting in all this evidence against Clay Bertrand, and they had to try to prove that Clay Shaw was Clay Bertrand, they submitted the fingerprint card to the judge, Judge Haggerty, and the defense attorneys for Clay Shaw insisted upon having the jury leave the courtroom, and they had a day-long set of hearings challenging the admissibility of the fingerprint card. And it came down to a position that the police officers, according to the testimony of two of Clay Shaw's lawyers, the lawyers testified that they had been excluded from the Bureau of Investigation office where Clay Shaw had been brought, and they took his fingerprints, and they in fact had not been allowed to come into the office. And the police officer, this police officer, when Habergorst, Habigorst, Habergorst asked Clay Shaw whether he had an alias of Clay Bertrand, and when Shaw answered yes, he did, that was questioning of him in custody by police, in custodial custody, and that he had not been warned that he had a right to have an attorney with him, and he had not been warned that he had a right to remain silent. And so therefore, the lawyers protested the submission of that particular fingerprint card to the jury to prove that Clay Shaw was Clay Bertram. And Judge Haggerty ruled that he did not believe the police officers when they said that they had not in fact stopped the lawyers from coming into the room, and that he did not believe the police officer when the police officer said that he had just simply given the card to Clay Shaw, and that Clay Shaw had by himself put in the information that he had an alias by the name of Clay Bertram. And so the bottom line is that it appears that the police officers not only had violated the Sixth Amendment right of Clay Shaw to have his attorney with him, but they had violated his Fifth Amendment right by not telling him that he had a right to remain silent, and that any evidence that he provided would be used against him. And therefore, the provision of that alias of Clay Bertram was highly incriminating information when it was put together with all the testimony that they had against this guy, Clay Bertram, and connecting him to Oswald and trying to provide legal counsel for him. So the case collapsed at that point. And even though Jim Garrison put in lots of evidence indicating that the Warren Commission was untrustworthy, and the reports were untrustworthy, the investigation had been untrustworthy. He basically attacked, in his trial, Clay Shaw, he attacked the credibility of the Warren Commission report. But the judge ruled that, that no matter how much evidence he put in, indicating that there had been a conspiracy and that Oswald was involved in it, that it didn't attach to Clay Shaw, because he was unable to provide adequate testimony that Clay Shaw was Clay Bertram. Now later, after excluding the evidence and the collapse of the case, Judge Haggerty actually stated that he was convinced that Clay Shaw was lying. That Clay Shaw was lying when he said that he wasn't Clay Bertram. And he believed he was lying when he said that he didn't, that he hadn't given that information to them. And so that it turns out that the judge believed that the police were lying when they tried to say that this was just voluntarily given over by Clay Shaw. And he believed that Clay Shaw was lying when he swore to the jury that he wasn't Clay Bertram. And so that they were both lying. And the judge was faced with a set of legal rulings that he had to make about the admissibility of this particular fingerprint card, which he ruled on, I think, correctly, in light of the law. And so what happened is, because of the overzealous police department keeping the guy's lawyers away from him and getting him to admit that he used the alias of Clay Bertram, basically the case fell apart. And what happened is that all of the major national news media and all of the major political office holders in the country, on both sides, both political parties, basically just excoriated Jim Garrison, and basically, accused him of being a grandstander, that he was just seeking national publicity, that he was totally eccentric, and it was very unfortunate, because this was the only legal case that, as it turns out, was ever going to be brought, basically asserting that that these people had been part of a conspiracy to kill the president. There was one later, which we'll touch on much later. It was a libel trial that went down later against E. Howard Hunt and some others that we'll talk about, with Mark Lane involved in it. So this is the famous, later infamous trial in New Orleans that was undertaken by Jim Garrison, in which he basically asserted that the actual conspiracy to kill President Kennedy had originated at a comparatively low level among a group of ultra right-wing, rabid anti-communists like Guy Bannister and David Ferry, and this group of guys, and this guy Clay Shaw, and that they had somehow, in working with Lee Harvey Oswald, gotten Oswald to go to Dallas and kill President Kennedy. But it had been a stretch right from the very beginning with Jim Garrison, and that Garrison had made the very careless mistake of thinking that he could sort of initiate the criminal case, and that he could thereafter gather adequate evidence to convict them. But he was depending in the final analysis upon coercing David Ferry into testifying. And it turns out that the newspaper in New Orleans, when on February 17th of 1967, the New Orleans State's Item, it's called, the newspaper, published a front page ad exposing the fact that this investigation was going on. Just 5 days later, on February 22nd, after having called to Jim Garrison's office in talking with Ivan, Garrison's investigator, stating that, look, the fact that this has been exposed, I am a dead man. You know, that I'm going to be killed, and within 4 days, he was dead. And so the key witness that Garrison was going to be relying upon, David Ferry, to break him and get him to confess that he had in fact been involved with Clay Shaw and Oswald in this conspiracy to kill the president, ended up being dead. And so he lost his crucial witness. He had been engaged in this existential process of attempting to get the ball rolling, figuring that once the case really got rolling, he was going to be able to get Ferry to break and testify, and instead he got dead. And so that was the fate of the Garrison trial. And what happened is that all of the governmental elements and all of the news media elements that had been so active in attempting to fight back against the critics of the Warren Commission report, against Mark Lane and the others, they all rallied, and they basically used the fact that Garrison's case had failed for the two reasons that he had been unable to get the proof in that Clay Shaw was Clay Bertrand, and because David Ferry had died. That those two things caused his case to collapse, and the media and the government officials had a field day, basically just excoriating him, and therefore they said, you see, this is the substantive value of these conspiracy theories, and they basically used it as an example of the vapid, vacuous nature of any of the conspiracy theories. And so that the role of the Jim Garrison case and the Clay Shaw case is an extraordinarily important event in the history of the Kennedy assassination, because of the use to which it was put by all of the supporters of the Warren Commission and all of those who ridiculed all of the conspiracy theories. So that's the role that the Garrison investigation plays. But the fact of the matter is that the movie that was made by Oliver Stone in 1969 is an extremely important, 1991. In 1991, it's an extremely important motion picture, because it in fact rekindled a lot of the major national attention toward this assassination, and basically because of the way Oliver Stone choreographed his presentation, what he did is he took not only all of the information of the Garrison investigation, but he superimposed upon it the work of two other people that were very important. The most important one of which was Fletcher Prouty. Fletcher Prouty was when you see the movie, and I do want you to take the time to see this movie. You can pull it up. I guess you can get it on your computers. If anybody has Netflix, you can get it on Netflix. I don't think they have any stores where you can go and get DVDs anymore.
There's a video store downtown.
Okay.
They don't have it.
Okay, but how do you get it?
I'm streaming it.
It's got,
There's a website that has it on there.
okay, tell the folks what it is.
I actually have it on my laptop. I didn't write down. I just Googled it. Just Googled stream JFK by Oliver Stone.
Okay, there it is. So just Google that, stream JFK by Oliver Stone, and I want you to take a look at it. And that's I think I got it on the assignment list, but that is an assignment for this week. Okay, so I want you to take a look at that, because what I want to be able to talk about what it is that Oliver Stone did, because Fletcher Prouty is the guy who you're going to see in the movie as Mr. X. in the movie. And he's played by Donald Sutherland. And L. Fletcher Prouty, whom I've spent a good deal of time talking with, was the liaison from the Pentagon, Joint Chiefs of Staff, to the Central Intelligence Agency. He was actually responsible primarily for providing all of the military equipment and backup equipment that was needed by the Central Intelligence Agency and any other intelligence agencies. Any type of military equipment or military backup that they needed, he was in charge of providing that. And he has written a couple different books. One called The Secret Team, and the other one called just JFK, I think it's called. But it's in it, what he does is he sets forth all of the circumstantial evidence indicating that that the military industrial complex, in a sense, was responsible for killing the president. And I'm going to give you a specific assignment. I'm going to want you to, in watching the movie, which I know you're going to do between now and Thursday, that I want you to take some time and watch the movie, and you're going to find when Kevin Costner, who is playing Jim Garrison, goes to Washington, D.C. to meet with this Mr. X on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. This Mr. X is going to take him and sit him down at a park bench by the Lincoln Memorial, and is going to relate information to him. And he's going to tell you that it's his judgment that his military superior, whom he refuses to name, is the one he believes that gave the green light to going ahead and killing the president. And I'm going to ask you on Thursday who that is. Okay? And I'll give you a hint. They actually show the nameplate on the desk of that general that is masked behind a flower, so you can only see a few of the letters. Okay? So, but that becomes critical because L. Fletcher Prouty, the commander of the United States Pentagon's liaison office for the Central Intelligence Agency for black operations, has asserted that that's the guy. That's the guy that gave the green light on this. And you're going to see it because L. Fletcher Prouty told Oliver Stone who that was.
You mean Garrison?
That,
Garrison.
yeah, he told, L. Fletcher Prouty told Oliver Stone who that was. Because Fletcher Prouty, according to Garrison, didn't tell him who it was. He just said, I'm not telling you who it is. Okay, he called him General Y, is what he called him. But in that I talked to Stone, and Stone says Fletcher Prouty told him who it was, and I realized that in that one scene that Stone had actually gone to the point of putting the name on the nameplate and then hiding it behind the flower so you couldn't see the whole thing. But,
Significant piece of evidence, how many years later does Prouty meet with Stone, now producing a movie, and say, long ago, I communicated to Garrison some of this?
well, Garrison confirmed that he had said that to him, but he just wouldn't tell him who it was.
Prouty, at the time of Garrison's trial, hadn't done all his own research yet. He was sure it was him, but he hadn't done his own research yet. But if you search on Prouty on the internet, he will explain it. He will not only explain it, you will see pictures, you will see documents, you will see everything.
Yeah.
Without giving it completely away.
Okay. So, but I want you guys to. This is an investigation task. that I've given to you. That basically, I'm telling you that, you know, as young Sherlock Holmes, that there's a piece of information gonna be right in front of you, and that you'll be able to tell, and that if you figure out who this person is, it's gonna tell you an awful lot about what Prouty is saying happened here.
Years
Okay.
later.
Okay. I don't give a shit whether it was yesterday. I mean, the fact of the matter is if you've got the guy who's the head of the covert operations supplies telling you this is the guy that I believe did it, that is probative, okay? And so that I want you to find out what that is that Prouty is saying, okay? Okay. Okay, so and then Greg and Terry can have it out in the hall afterwards. Okay, so there we are. We're at the spot where I've agreed each day that we'll be able to dialogue about this, and you can ask questions about this. And you can ask questions about not only the Garrison investigation and the information that Prouty has given to both Oliver Stone and to Garrison, but you can ask questions also about the papers and the demographics of our class, and you can actually make recommendations as to how you'd like to, you know, all sit in the class from this point forward, so we'll know where the groups are, or any of all those subjects.
Did you place us on the actual sketch? Did you put us on the thing? Did you put our names on
And I won't tell you which way it goes from A to C. A's and B's. No, that's not what I said. No. I will say that the quality of the papers was uniformly high, and the fact that you spread out over these various theories is a great tribute to your objectivity and independence. Yes.
What if your name wasn't called? Does that just mean you're still pretty indifferent about everything?
Well, no, what it means is I wasn't able to tell what you were saying in your paper, because some people were pretty clear about what they thought, and others were going on saying, well, on one hand there's this, and the other hand there's that, and I kept saying, well, come on, you know, but I'll have made a note on your papers if I felt that you weren't getting as clear as you might have been. Yes, sir.
In some of the readings, there's been reference to an H.L. Hunt, and I was wondering if that is the same person as E. Howard Hunt?
No, it's not. E. Howard Hunt was the individual who was the commander of the paramilitary base that was in the Everglades. It was a CIA, full-time CIA operative who was in charge of that particular paramilitary group. And he is the E. Howard Hunt, who was one of the supervisors of the Watergate break-in. He was one of the ones that wasn't arrested that night. He and Frank Sturgis were actually standing lookout for the burglars, but he was one of the principal organizers of the burglary, and he was a principal in the plumbers unit in the White House of Richard Nixon. But H.L. Hunt is a major wealthy oil man and a speculator in silver, who he and his brother made a valiant effort to corner the silver market, but is a big, major, powerful person in Dallas, and is the owner of the Hunt building, which is the Daltex building, which is right next door to the book depository. And in the JFK movie, you will see Garrison making reference to the Daltex building, hypothesizing that there were 3 shooter teams, each with a rifleman and a spotter, and that one of them, they surmised, was more probably than not in the Daltex building, which was owned by H.L. Hunt. And it's the building where James Braden, I'm waiting for you to look up now, there it is, James Braden, who you asked about before, was taken into custody coming out of the Daltex building on November 22nd, and was also placed within a block of the hotel in Los Angeles on June 5th of 1968, when Bobby Kennedy was killed. Okay, so that's the H.L. Hunt. Pardon? Braden. That was the name of James Braden.
He's got other aliases.
Yes, he's got a number of aliases. Okay, so what else? What else have we got here, kids? Okay, Cody.
So, Dick Billings had talked with Garrison, I guess,
Oh,
and
yes.
Garrison had expressed viewpoints on Martin, that he wasn't as credible as he thought he was. It seems like Martin is the whole tie. It's the investigation going along fair.
Well, you got it going. There wasn't any doubt about that. That was one of the starting points of it. But there was another source that Ivins had, who is the one who also confirmed that he had gotten information that Ferry had driven to Texas on the night of the 21st to serve as the getaway pilot as well. So it wasn't just him. And the reality is that any one of these witnesses, when you get people who are in that particular environment, there's a great deal of whooping and puffing going on, and exaggeration going on, and falsification going on, so that the ability to put together a set of witnesses that are going to not be subject to some criticism is very difficult for prosecutors. And the defense counsel justifiably take particular advantage of that. But for example, there's the classic image, and in fact, there's a reference to it in the movie where I think it's Garrison himself said that I've never quite been able to understand why it is that just because a woman is a prostitute, they assume that she can't see very well. If she's testifying to something she saw directly being true, that the one doesn't necessarily impinge on the other one. So but it is true that Billings spent a good deal of time, actually, down in New Orleans, working with Garrison. He actually took leave from the Life magazine and went down to work with Garrison on the investigation. Garrison is a very difficult person to work with, and that you'll see that there was a whole lot of stuff going on inside that office of people quitting and he's accepted their resignation if they don't agree with him, and there's a whole lot of that stuff going on. And there was a great deal of effort made on the part of the national news media to make those dynamics inside the office the story, as distinct from what it is that was being said by the witnesses. Yes, Greg?
Two things. One, the handout I gave you last week in the lecture, in the back, there's a section that says Dramatis Personae. And that is from a book called The Kennedy Conspiracy de Paris Flamand. And it's him covering the Garrison trial in progress. So when you watch the movie, if you want to use that to see little bios of everybody that's coming up, you can do that. That's one of the reasons I put it in. The other thing I was just going to comment on what you said, it wasn't just Dick Billings, it was Mark Lane, it was Mae Brussel, it was like a whole bunch of researchers descended on Garrison to try and give him info.
Yes,
And he did take info from varying groups of them to put together.
David Lifton.
Yeah,
I remember was there.
but they were all over.
Yeah, a lot of the critics of the Warren Commission saw the Garrison trial as an opportunity, a vessel within which to potentially put forth information and evidence in a juridical setting that gave them an opportunity to kind of break loose the information. It's usually a pretty risky operation to think that you can just sort of, in a sense, roll a grenade in somewhere and you're going to get everybody running around and they're all going to start confessing. You know, that isn't how it goes. You need to have a much more methodical process. And I do say that Garrison was in fact a bit too cavalier with regard to his expectations about how he was just gonna be able to start bowling around in a china shop, and that basically, you know, all the Chinese vases were gonna start breaking, and that all these secrets were gonna come out, because it didn't happen. So let me sit with the kids for a second here, if I can. Yes?
Some issues with how you portray the news media, like, this is your own portrayal, but
Yeah.
basically, I feel like we're supposed to accept that the national media is just not paid for.
No.
Well, then, okay, so, because, I'm wondering if it's possible that the national media would be sent the district attorney, if they're just piggybacking on the local media to sort of get a free story, and just follow suit with that, or if they really were involved with trying to smear him.
Well, it was the two or three things I think can be said there, is that, and the first and most important one of which is that Jim Garrison made it a lot easier than it should have been to be able to criticize him. You know, because it was clear that he was engaged in the utilization of the tools of the prosecutor in a way that is fairly common for prosecutors to do. But the fact is, it makes them very vulnerable because they're threatening and cajoling and coercing, and for example, you'll see in the movie where when his investigator Lou Ivan brings him out to meet this one guy who is in prison for homosexual prostitution, and Garrison goes to sit down to talk with him, and there's a very specific suggestion in the movie that he was offered an early parole. That in fact Garrison would have, for example, given him an early parole if he said the kind of things that Garrison wanted to hear. You know, I mean, what that's like is in the old movie Casablanca, where they're going, oh no, gambling going on right here. You know, but prosecutors do that all the time. But defense attorneys properly call attention to it and say, look, here's a guy who, you know, was in prison for 8 years, and you offered to get him parole after 2 years, and then he told you what you wanted to hear. And so that's something that clearly Garrison was doing, making those kinds of offers. And what happened is the media came in and picked up on those things, almost like defense counsel would, and used them to attack his credibility and objectivity. But the second thing that's important to point out is that it was discovered later on in the church committee, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Abuse in 1976. Later, it was discovered that there was a project going on by the Central Intelligence Agency. It was called Operation Mockingbird. And what they had done is they had placed 42 full-time Central Intelligence Agency operatives inside the major news media. And that they were taking positions usually in the national security area. And that they had a specific assignment to actually turn the media away from discovering any covert operations being undertaken by the Central Intelligence Agency, and to also whip up negative information about anybody who'd been targeted by the Central Intelligence Agency to attempt to discredit them, whether they're foreign leaders or domestic critics. Okay, and so that the tone that you heard me using, and it was a fair observation on your part, is that the consistency with which the major national news media took a uniform position against Garrison and what he was trying to do down there was unique in a sense. That there were very few dissenting people involved in that, and that they went to great lengths to attempt to discredit the entire endeavor that he was engaged in. Okay, and I'm saying, and it's not that his activities, as I pointed out at the top of my response to you, it's not that he was beyond criticism at all in what he was doing.
So the stuff, it may have been legitimate journalism, just on the stuff that was easy to pull to the surface. So
No, some of it was. The thing that was peculiar about it was the uniform consistency of it. Is that you would have thought that since they're major news media and are supposed to be interested in whether the president was killed by a conspiracy, that they might have conducted some effort to investigate the actual information rather than attacking him and his tactics. And you saw virtually none of that. There was, in fact, NBC actually sent down 4 people, and they all specifically stated that they were there to destroy the credibility of Garrison and his investigation. Two of the 4 people.
Wow.
Okay.
Carl Bernstein's article, and, you know, when they were talking about Operation Mockingbird and 42 journalists, when he did his research, and he released it at the time, you probably know this, he said there was over 400 journalists when Bernstein did his article. And that was the late 70s when he was cranking down.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that I've seen it myself. That when the decision was made with regard to the Iran-Contra case, that they were not going to, the media was not going to look into the substance of the charges against the enterprise. They were going to spend their time attacking the people who were trying to expose the enterprise. And that there was just uniform consistency on the part of the media. It's just something that you need to be aware of. You know, that hopefully you would encounter honest journalists and people that were objective in focusing on the public interest rather than just attacking people that were criticizing the establishment. But, yes.
Sort of like how when Snowden came out with his thing, there were a few weeks where everyone asked in the media, was it ethical? Was it ethical? Did he do the right thing? Rather than looking at what he actually released.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things that happens, you know, that's what happened with him.
Did any foreign governments or leaders look into this assassination and notice that like it was like inconsistent and like all these investigations were getting shot down just like outside of the U.S. because it seems that like investigative journalism just was getting shot down over and over. Like if like I don't know the UK like published something that like it seems very probable that this happened or something.
Well, the European news media, for example, that's what was your name again? Michael, Christopher. That I mean is that the European news media. If you were to look at how the European news media were covering the trial and what it is that they were looking at and stuff like that, you would see this kind of just complete difference of view. That the European news media were digging in and asking questions about the witnesses and what they were saying and what the implications were and all of that. And the major American news media were not doing any of that at all. They were spending virtually all of their time, and it's worth a research issue yourself to take a look at this question because it's important for you as a media journalist type of thing to get some kind of a clear sense of exactly how accurate this type of a critique is, you know. And so I want you to be objective, and I appreciate your pushing back on that. I do. Okay, so do the students here first. Okay, 1, 2.
So I was looking more into the memo from Hoover to Allen Dulles about the CIA agent, was it Bush?
Yes, George Bush.
Yeah, so I just started this research yesterday, but like I found some people accusing Zapata being a CIA threat, funneling weapons to Cuba.
Yep.
And then some people even said that Bush was directly involved in the Bay of Pigs in organizing some of the attacks where everyone was coming, like all this stuff. And then I looked more into it, and after like the whole Yale thing, they're saying that like Bush's father was actually a Nazi, like he was money laundering for the Nazis,
Yeah.
and then that would like connect to Allen Dulles
Uh-huh.
because they were all part of the CIA and like the Nazi OSS and all this stuff.
Now you're getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've bumped into something interesting there. Yeah, there are trails, you're on the right trail there.
Yeah, so then there were more connections that would connect Bush to Hunt.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right. That's right. There's a book called The Family,
Yeah.
by Russell,
Charlet or whatever.
no,
Maybe
wait, but it's called The Family.
Yeah.
Something
So the
Russell.
Nazi hunter book.
Yeah, oh, that, he'll get to that one.
And
And I don't wanna dose him right with it.
about that other Bush that Allen Dulles was talking about, like he gave testimony saying that, oh yeah, that's not me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not me for sure. Okay, then,
If Oswald was and a member of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee
Mhm.
and a self-proclaimed Marxist, was there any explanation offered as to why he's sharing an office with the Anti-Communist League and doing stealing guns for anti-Castro members?
Good question.
And
Yeah.
all that?
there probably is some explanation. There probably is. Huh?
Was there anyone offered in the Garrison case, or was that brought up at all?
It's very interesting. One of the shortcomings of Garrison's case was that he didn't really seem to settle upon any one specific theory. He was basically going on the basis of information that he was getting piecemeal about what he obviously pulled the trigger prematurely on initiating this criminal prosecution. That you needed to really figure out more carefully what your theory was, because you can't really, it's the old legal pleading where you say, look, in a lawsuit where you sue me for having stolen your pot, and your vase, let's say, and I take the position that, well, I never took your vase, and besides, it leaked every time I tried to use it. So they have what they call alternative pleading, but it doesn't work well in a criminal case. And so he never did really settle very much on what his theory was here. It's exactly what was going on. Other people have, I might add, that they've taken a position that they believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was actually functioning at an early age as part of a major covert operation to go into the Soviet Union to be a dangle, they call it. When you're a dangle, and then they come and contact you and try to get you to give information because he was at the U-2 base, and then they find out who those operative agents are, then he can feed the information back to military intelligence, and then when he came back to the U.S., that he'd gotten involved in actually infiltrating the right-wing anti-Castro Cuban community. But that would presume that there was some law enforcement agency in the executive branch who cared that they were really doing that, and that there is a lot of evidence to support that. But that's a very important observation that you're making there. Because you say, wait a second, what does that mean? How would that be consistent with what he was doing? Okay, but that's a great question, Wes.
Just in response to what Alan said, there's a movie about that's on Netflix. It's pretty badly made. But it's the whole George Bush theory, and it's pretty interesting. Dark Legacy.
Yeah, there is one. Just let's get the kids here. Yes.
We've just got some announcements, and we have to pass out papers. I don't want anyone to.
Oh, that's right. We got 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that all the students get your questions asked and answered. And then before we unloose the learned elders, the long-term learners. That's right.
I was just on the book thing before, the family, you didn't mean the one by Jeff Charlatan.
No.
That's a whole.
It's called
Family of
The
Secrets.
Family of
Family
Secrets.
of Secrets, okay.
That's the one, the
Got it.
Family of Secrets. The Family of Secrets is a very, very interesting book. It's not on your assigned reading, but it's for those who are more interested in this line of the connections with the Bush theory of this thing, should follow up on that one.
That's Russ Baker.
Russ Baker, that's what it is. Russ Baker's Family of Secrets. Okay, now don't go away. I want to ask a couple of questions, get a couple of questions from the longtime learners, and then we got some announcements to make here. And then your papers are up here too. Yes?
Okay. I was going to start this question originally by talking about David Talbot's book and his take on the Garrison case, which he seems to say again, as you're saying now, that he was rather clumsy, let's just put it that way. However, as somebody who actually married into New Orleans and lived there and met many a character in New Orleans, I was an activist there, and also my father was a East Coast lawyer, so I just want to say that in this class where we're talking about worldviews as a basis also for sort of understanding the nature of evidence versus, you know, what people are going to ultimately believe or put out the case. I just want to say, I think there's a tendency amongst that some people, for example, one of the reasons people vote for Bush, because they think he's a straight shooter, George Bush the younger. Straight shooters. He's not from the East Coast elite Ivy League schools, and I've met many people in the field who truly feel more comfortable believing Bush because he seems to be more of a more natural guy or whatever, more regular guy.
He is from the East Coast, I believe.
So, right, well, he actually,
Yes.
anyway, he was
Yes.
actually from Texas, but anyway,
That's how you
what
were
I'm
gonna
trying to,
start
what
your
I'm
question.
trying to get here is, I think a lot of times, especially amongst lawyers and people who are erudite in the system and experienced, to believe that a lot of this stuff is more manageable. I mean, here you have, all right, let's just say one of the most possibly ruthless, killing sense of, at the same time, legitimate people in the CIA, people at the military, you know, possibly Lyndon B. Johnson. These are people who supposedly have this credibility that's completely pure, that's completely, you know, the pedigree. The thing about New Orleans culture is extraordinarily different from the East Coast culture. And if you
And West Coast culture.
And West Coast culture, but I would say that the culture of law is much more like the culture of the East Coast erudite intellectual opinion than it is of the New Orleans school. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is when you are faced with an assassination of the president of this magnitude, of this order, I personally feel, and I think you were kind of saying this at the beginning of your talk here tonight about Garrison, I feel that he was somewhat circumspect. And he had said, okay, we've done our part. He looked into the evidence and this and that. And I would just like to submit as an opinion that we wouldn't even be this far along in terms of evidence and theories and long narratives and all this stuff if this guy hadn't actually used his position in an extremely thoughtful for what he could do at the time. And, you know, let's face it, over the years, how many people would have just died or how much more would have been buried? So I don't think it's quite fair to represent Garrison as somebody who exactly threw in like kind of, and I'm not saying you're doing this, I think this is something that David Talbot does a little bit in his book, but I think he is actually extremely methodical and erudite. The New Orleans culture, which is a very different culture than the East Coast, where gambling is much more an accepted part of life, has to be taken into consideration. But I just wanted to say this because when it comes down to examining our media, to examining our government, to examining where we are, I think the notion that the legal system upholds some standard where we can actually get at the truth, might itself be very questionable.
Okay, let's not run out of all of our time. Great,
I just
one
wanted
thing
to
to
say
say.
one thing
Yeah.
about Garrison, since I've read all of his stuff already, and a lot about Garrison. Garrison was terrified of the mob. Okay, so he had a basic fear of the mafia, because it was such big control down there. So you will notice that his investigation goes more towards the intelligence side of things and everything, and he avoids the mafia. Ultimately, you know, his reputation was ruined because of connections with the mafia and the vending machines and that sort of thing. So he had a basic fundamental fear of the mob, but not so much of intelligence.
Okay. Yeah, just let's use them administrative. Yes, Rob.